Good morning, children. In last class, we finished what is RBI and what are the functions of RBI, and we understood the functions of RBI on different parameters. Okay, now let us go to the next chapter, that is chapter 11, the types of banks. See, when we learn the types of banks, basically the banks can be classified on few criterias. First thing is, based on functions, banks could be classified under 11 categories. Next is based on the status given by the banks, that is status given by the RBI, banks could be categorized under two categories. And lastly, based on the ownership pattern, what is the ownership, who owns the bank, who are the shareholders of the bank, what is the share contribution, share capital contribution, who makes the contribution of the capital. Based on that ownership, banks could be classified under different criterias. Now first let us understand how banks are classified based on the functions that they do. The first, under that, the first category is central bank. Central bank, the central bank of our country is RBI. Everything about RBI we saw in chapter 10. In the last class we saw only about RBI, the central bank. It was created in the year 1935. Previously it was originally the Imperial Bank of India, where the share capital was owned only by the private people, and 1935 onwards, from 1949 only, the share capital was taken over by the RBI, was taken over by the bank, by the government of India, and from then on it started functioning as the central bank of our country. Whatever the functions, even before that, Imperial Bank was doing the functions of present of the RBI, but the name was Imperial Bank and it was owned by the private individuals only, and the share capital was owned by the individuals. And we also saw what is the role of the RBI in the development of our country. Next is commercial banks. The basic work of commercial bank is what? To accept the deposits from the public. And what does the bank do by accepting the deposits from the public? It gives these money as loans to the traders, to the individuals, for agricultural purposes, for industrial purpose, for all the economic activities. Okay, it gives loan in a whichever is legally approved. It gives loan, and in the process of distributing the loan, from the savings that it has received from the public, it earns a certain amount of profit. Commercial banks mainly function only to earn profit. We need to understand this. Central bank, the main objective is not profit making, it is economic development. It aims at the growth of the country, whereas commercial banks, the main objective is what? Profit making only. So their lending will be comparatively on smaller amounts only. Mostly it will lend short term loans and medium term loans only, and it keeps, apart from that, it also provides the services like remitting of fund on behalf of to other bank on behalf of the customers. And it also has a function, does the function of keeping the safe custody of the valuables of the customers, collection of the checks. It issues the letter of credit to the customers, and it also gives bank guarantees for the reliable customers or the people who have transactions or who are in touch with the bank for a long period of time. So these are the functions of commercial bank. But the functions of commercial bank will be learning in depth in the forthcoming chapters. A small introduction of what is a commercial bank we have understood. Examples of commercial bank: the State Bank of India is a commercial bank, Karur Vysya Bank is a commercial, Standard Chartered Bank is a commercial bank, because they do the work of accepting the saving deposits as a savings. It can be different type of savings, okay. That also we shall see in depth in that particular lesson. And it lends loans out of the money that it has bought as savings from the public. Next is developmental banks. The name development itself, we need to understand that the main purpose of this bank is to develop the country. Now, when we look into this aspect, whenever we think of development, huge amount of money is required for the development of the country. As such, so individuals do not have huge amount of money to invest in the development of the country. They can invest for the development of themselves. But for the development of the country, definitely huge amount of money is required for expansion and modernization of the industries. So we can broadly categorize this banks under two broad categories. One thing is we need to develop our agriculture sector. The other is we need to develop our industrial sector. Both are important for the growth of a country. So the banks which lends money, huge amount of finance for the development of industries are called as industrial banks. Okay, you have separate type of banks which whose main objective is to provide finance for development of industries. Such banks are called, development banks are called as industrial bank. Their main aim is what? To create is not profit making, but to support the country towards achieving its macroeconomic objectives. What are the country's objectives? When you take our country, what is the main objective of our country? We need to increase employment opportunities, reduce unemployment, reduce poverty, okay, bring price stability, and have a good foreign exchange, foreign trade contacts, and apart from that, increase the productivity. By increasing productivity, employment also could be generated, consumption also could be encouraged, people will be made available of all the commodities. So the country cannot do all these work. The government of India cannot undertake the development of the country on the whole by itself. So it requires the assistance of the banks. So the role of banks in our economic development is a very important or a significant role it plays. So development banks have been created, okay, for the development of industries. By doing that, it aims at development of the country's objectives. When industries are developed, it creates huge amount of employment opportunities. So these industrial development banks, they lend long-term credits and medium-term credits. Normally, they avoid giving short-term credits because developmental activities requires a long time, where short-run credit loans will not be given by the developmental banks. And these long-term loans ranges from 5 years to 25 years of repayment period. And these developmental banks, they do not accept deposits from the public. Now you can think, they don't accept deposits from public, then where from will they have the money to lend for the industrial development? So their main capital is only the shares and debentures which are subscribed by the public. So they let out, they raise their capital by issuing equity share capital to the public. By way of that subscription of shares and debentures, they raise their capital, and this money is being utilized for lending loans for the industrial purposes. Initially, IDBI, all of us, we might have come across the bank called as IDBI Bank. The IDBI expansion is Industrial Development Bank of India. This Industrial Development Bank of India was established in the year 1964, mainly for development of the industries. It was an development bank only. It did not accept the public deposits. Rather, it was started only with the intention of development of industries. Okay, giving loans to the industries. But later on, in 2004, this IDBI was converted into a public sector commercial bank. And now, many of you might have got accounts, savings account and current account with IDBI. Now, because of the reason that it has been converted into a commercial bank. Now, the next type of bank is, I told you, we need to develop industries, we need to develop agriculture sector. So for the development of agricultural sector, the development bank which was created by the government is the NABARD. NABARD is National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, NABARD, NABARD. So all the banks which the main objective of NABARD is what? To develop agricultural sector, to give financial support for the agriculture sector. So under development banks, we have got two categories: Industrial Development Bank and Agriculture Development Bank. Agriculture Development Bank is controlled by whom? NABARD. Next is the Industrial Development Banks. Examples are IFCI, Industrial Finance Corporation of India, Small Industries Development Bank of India, where it gives loan facilities for the small concerns. Next is Mudra Bank. It is a recent origin, 1997 only this was started. Okay, and this Mudra Bank is initiated or was established only for the purpose of development of micro industries. Micro means very small industries. The small industries, SIDBI for the development of small enterprises, Industrial Finance Bank for the development of large industries. Now let us go to the next type of bank called as cooperative banks. Cooperative banks, it is owned by the customers. The members are the shareholders are the members. Okay, and at this bank particularly, these members will be maximum the farmers, small traders and others who are interested in contributing to the cooperative banks. These cooperative banks are also not run for profit making. They are mostly located in urban based areas and particularly in rural areas only. They are not in cities or metropolitan cities. So this rural cooperative banks, they operate on a 3-tier structure. 3-tier structure means central cooperative bank, state cooperative bank, district cooperative bank. If they operate in this way, you call it as 3-tier structure, where they give short-term loans. When they operate in what is the 3-tier structure, they give short-term loans. When they operate in 2-tier structure, they give long-term loans. Long-term loans means that is central cooperative banks, state cooperative banks are there, means they give long-term loans. And for both the all types of cooperative banks, whether it is 3-tier or 2-tier cooperative banks, it comes under the NABARD only. The Apex Bank. Apex Bank means the main bank where it is attached to is the NABARD. What is NABARD? National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. Now, the cooperative banks. To start a cooperative bank, it has to be registered under the Tamil Nadu Cooperative Societies Act of 1983. Even in Coimbatore, we have got the district, Coimbatore City District Cooperative Bank. You have got this branches. Even in NSR Road, we have got this cooperative bank. Next is the main objective of this rural cooperative bank is what? Rural development, agriculture development, and it is not profit making. And the examples of cooperative banks is Tamil Nadu State Apex Cooperative Bank, Madurai District Cooperative Bank, and I told you Coimbatore District Cooperative Bank. All these are the examples of cooperative banks. Next is foreign bank. A bank which is registered in a foreign country, but it has got branches in India. If such a type of bank where its registration is done in some other country and the branches are established in India, such a type of bank you call it as foreign banks. Now this foreign banks, will it be located in rural areas? Definitely no. These foreign banks are located in metropolitan cities and in port towns only. In big cities and port towns only such banks are located. And mostly these banks they work like a multinational corporation only. Their main aim is profit making only. When you look into the profitability of these banks, foreign banks are more profitable than the Indian banks. In 2017, in India, there were almost 42 foreign banks. But right now, that number would have been increased. And they have to oblige. Obliging means follow. They have to follow all the rules of the parent country as well as Indian norms also they have to follow. They have to follow whatever the norms that has been specified by our central bank. What is our central bank? Reserve Bank of India. It lays down certain formalities to have banking regulations are there. It has to follow the banking regulations of India as well as they have to follow the banking regulations which has been prescribed in their home country where the headquarters is established. Now few examples of foreign banks are Bank of America, where the headquarters it is located at USA, Barclays Bank, it is a UK based bank, and Deutsche Bank, it is a Germany based bank. You need to pronounce it as Deutsche. Next type of bank is Regional Rural Bank, RRBs. See, these Regional Rural Banks, they are established under the Act of Regional Rural Bank Act, which was set up, which was enforced in the year 1976. See, according to this, the share capital, the rural banks are mainly run by three heads: the central bank, state bank, and there will be one sponsorer bank. So these three together, they form the regional rural banks. And what is the share capital of the rural banks? Out of the total share capital, 50% is being given by the central bank, 15% is given by the state bank, and remaining 35% is given by one of the sponsors bank. Okay. Now, what is the main objective of this rural RRBs? Their main objective is to develop rural areas. The name itself is it is exemplary. It implies it is regional rural bank. That is, it develops the rural economy only. It almost plays the role of a cooperative society bank, and it mobilizes the deposits from the rural public, and it gives loans to the small artisans, okay, small entrepreneurs, farmers, so that these farmers need not depend on the private money lenders, because private money lenders will charge huge rate of interest, and when they are not in a position to pay the money to the private money lenders, they have to forego their assets that they have mortgaged. Mortgage means adamanam. So, regional rural banks are mainly established to help the farmers and small artisans from the grip of the money lenders. And the number of RRBs. From as on 13/3/2016, there were 56 RRBs in India, where these RRBs had 14,494 branches. And this RRB is also comes under the supervision of NABARD, because it is something related to what? Agriculture. NABARD, National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development. And examples of regional rural bank: Pallavan Grama Bank, Pandian Grama Bank, Vallalar Grama Bank, all those are established in the district level only. Next is specialized bank. See, when banks are created to do special functions, are created only for some specific purposes by the government, such banks are called as special banks. What are the special functions where a bank has to exclusively do those particular functions only? One thing is taking care of export and import. So the Exim Bank was started in the year 1981, particularly to facilitate international trade. When we talk of international trade, it includes exports and imports. So to take care of the exports and import formalities and to develop international trade, this Exim Bank was developed. This is called as a special bank because it performs only that particular function. The next type of specialized bank is National Housing Bank, NHB. This was established in the year 1987. The primary function or the only function of this NHB is to promote housing finance. Okay, it is a housing financial institutions. It operates at local level as well as regional levels also. They don't do any other task other than lending housing loans for the general public. So, what are the two types of special banks? Exim Bank and National Housing Bank. Next is Local Area Bank. See, this Local Area Bank, it was introduced by the RBI in the year 1996. Please underline the year, children, because each bank, it was all these are introduced only by the RBI under the special act, okay, under that particular special act on that particular years. This lab, that is Local Area Bank, they are small private sector banks. They are private sector banks, particularly they are established in semi-urban areas and in rural areas. Suppose, for example, in a particular village, the village population is less, means they cover or two to three villages are combined together, and for 2-3 villages they will have one local area bank. The main objective of this local area bank is to mobilize all this, to create the habit of banking with among the rural population in the villages. So they make the people aware of the need for savings. So they accept the deposits, and this money, whatever is being taken as savings from the public, is being lent to the public in that particular area itself. Okay, they don't give money to the people who doesn't belong to that particular area. So the main target of this bank is to lend loans only to the weaker sections. The RBI it received 227 applications for setting up this local area banks. But of this 227 applications, only 10 were approved by the RBI, and out of the 10, only 6 got license under Section 22 of the Banking Regulations Act, and lab was started. Now, what are the examples of local area banks? Coastal Local Area Bank, it was established in Andhra Pradesh. Krishna Bhima Samruddhi Local Bank, Telangana. Subhadra Local Area Bank and Maharashtra. See, what is the scope of the local area bank was not that much significant. As a result of that, even after 20 years of functioning, from 1996 it was established, even after 20 years, the local area banks did not create any impact on developing the local rural areas. As a result of that, the government itself has stopped issuing license for local area banks because it did not show any improvement in developing the rural areas. The next is small finance banks. The small finance banks, when you see, they are also private sector banks. They are set up in the areas where there are no banks or where the banking operations are very less, where you have underbanking regions. You call it as underbanking regions. That it means you have banks there, but the population is more that banks cannot cater to all the needs of the people in that area. So it is underbanked, or sometimes in few places there might not be banks also. So the small finance banks are set up in unbanked and underbanked regions. Their main objective is what? To mobilize savings. That is accepting the deposits from the public. From the deposits, they create loans to whom? They provide loans to small farmers and marginal farmers, and to micro industries, MSMEs, micro small industries, and apart from that, they provide loans to unorganized sector. Unorganized sector means any business unit which has been established without obtaining proper certification under the MSME schemes. Okay, they might not have obtained a certificate to start the business. Okay, no IT filing will be there. Such type of business, you call it as unorganized sector. See, for example, unorganized sector, you can take the example, if any person does cooking work, okay, taking to the needs of the local people around them, it is unorganized sector. And if they are doing some mud pots, you might have seen in the roadsides and all, they might have you might see the people selling what is it, potteries, designed potteries. They belong to unorganized sector. Tea shops, very small petty tea shops, that is unorganized sector. And where they employ a small a person where they don't come under any ESI benefits, no pension scheme, nothing will be there. Okay, today they'll be working and tomorrow they'll not be working also. So such type of sector, you call it as unorganized entities. So the main function of the small finance bank is to provide loans for these sectors of people. Example is also given. Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, ESAF, unorganized sector, and FinCare SFB is an unorganized sector. Next is payment banks. See, payment banks are recent origin, where widespread payment and financial services has to be given to small businesses and low income households and migrant people. See, you have to have payment at your doorsteps. You wanted to buy something, and at the doorsteps you want the payment to be made. So to facilitate that, okay, these payment banks are set up. In the recent years, all of us, we are aware of Paytms. We are aware of Paytm, is it? We are aware of Paytm, we are aware of Google Pay, GPay, and Indian Postal Payment is there, and Airtel Payment is there. All those, apart from that, you might also know other modes of payment also. These are payment banks who exclusively take care of the payment which is being made by the individuals or migrant people who move from one place to another. They don't have cash. As a result, they use only their card for their payment. It is almost internet banking only. Using the debit cards and internet cards, the payments are being made. For doing this, they have to obtain the license under the heading of payment banks from the RBI. In August 2015 only, the RBI gave in principle license to payment banks. That is, they are entitled to receive the payment, okay, and for doing this service they can take a profit margin. The examples of Paytm banks are Airtel Paytm Bank, Paytm Payment Bank, and Indian Post Payment Banks. Next is multi-development banks. Multi-development banks means these are also development banks. It is formed by the government of a group of countries. The members of the developed nations, okay, they will be the donors of the country, and there will be borrowers for the borrower banks also. Developed banks and developing banks also will be, developing countries also will be the members of this multi-development banks, where the developed countries' money will be given to the developing countries, so they will be the borrowing countries. And these banks are mainly set up not for profit making, for the development of the whole world as such. So what is, see, when we think of development of the whole world, definitely it should be international banks only. So what are such international banks? IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, and European Investment Bank are some of the examples of multilateral development banks. So far, the 11 types of banks we saw are the banks which are based on the the types of banks based on the functions they do. Now, let us learn what are the types of banks which are given by the RBI based on the status. And based on the status, banks could be classified as scheduled banks and non-scheduled banks. See, any bank which follows the norms means rules and regulations, which are stipulated in the second schedule of the RBI Act. Under the RBI Act, you have a second schedule. If there will be few norms given under the second schedule, if the banks are satisfying such norms which are given in the second schedule of RBI Act 1934, such banks are called as scheduled banks. Very simple, children. When it follows the norms given in the second schedule of the RBI Act of 1934, such banks are called as scheduled banks. Now, such banks are given what? Financial accommodation and the remittance facility, all the concessions are given by the RBI. Next is, there are certain banks who do not follow the norms which are given by the RBI under the second schedule, but they follow the norms to be a bank. Okay, they will be doing the functions of a bank, but they will not follow the norms, they will not satisfy the norms which are prescribed under the second schedule of RBI Act. Such banks are called as non-scheduled banks. Non-scheduled banks can be private sector banks, it can be public sector banks, and it can be foreign banks also. Now, there are 5 urban cooperative banks and 3 local area banks which are non-scheduled banks, but they do the function of all the banking. The Paytm banks are non-scheduled banks because the second schedule will possess all the formalities which a bank has to follow. But these payment banks, they do only the payment details. Local area banks, they cater only to one particular local areas. So such type of banks are called as non-scheduled banks. Next is how the banks are being classified based on the ownership pattern. Based on the ownership pattern, banks can be called as government banks or public sector banks. Suppose if not less than 51% of the share capital, if it is owned by the government, then such banks are called as government banks or public sector commercial banks. Totally we have 21 public sector commercial banks and all the nationalized banks. The nationalized banks, what are the nationalized banks which are owned by the government? It is taken over by the government. Such banks are called the nationalized banks. 19 banks are nationalized banks as of 2017. The SBI and IDBI are public sector banks. Public sector commercial banks, because their main purpose is what? To earn profit, and the share capital is being raised by issuing of equity shares. All of them, they work almost like a joint stock company but they do the banking operations. Apart from that, corporation type of banks are also there, where a special act is being passed by the parliament and such cooperative banks are being created, but it is totally owned by the government of India. Next is all banking companies owned by private people. If the share capital is being owned totally only by the private people, such banks are called the private sector commercial banks, or what they called as private sector commercial banks. And all the cooperative societies also, the members are from the public only. And so far what all we saw? Government banks we saw, nationalized banks we saw, private sector banks we saw, and cooperative banks also we saw. Next is banking correspondence. See, the role of bank in recent days is very, very huge. They play a very vital role in the development of the country. But there are certain banking services which are to be done at a very low cost in certain locations other than where they have the bank branches. See, the banks have to cater to the needs of the people even in the areas where they do not have the branch or ATM. Okay, see, nowadays in almost all the places we have bank branches. If no branches are there, at least ATMs we have. But there will be certain places, locations where there will not be ATMs, there will not be a branch also. In such locations, the banks appoint retail agents to provide the banking services to that location. These banking agents may be appointed by that particular bank itself. So it is the responsibility, the act of the agent, okay, is the responsibility of the bank which appoints that particular agent. So this agency work, you call it as banking correspondence. So these agents, banking correspondents, offer service at the doorsteps of the people. And mainly the retired military officers, they can take up this agency work of doing the banking correspondence work. They will be non-government organization, okay, like in ex-servicemen individuals, they can apply for banking correspondence job. But nowadays, see, for example, SBI is a very big bank. The SBI can appoint some other bank as its banking correspondence bank and have the work done by another bank. So a big bank in a country, it can appoint another bank, okay, to do the activities also. Likewise, a foreign bank can appoint a local bank to do the correspondent activities. So the local bank will be the correspondent bank for the foreign bank. So this is the role of foreign banks. And apart from that, few examples we have. For nationalized bank, Indian Bank, Indian Overseas Bank, Oriental Bank of Commerce, all these are nationalized bank. That is, it is taken over by the government of India. When the share capital of those banks, if it is taken over from the private owners, if it is taken over by the government, you call it as nationalization. So Indian Bank is a nationalized bank. Next is public sector bank, where the share capital is owned by the public. Okay, you can subscribe to the shares of the State Bank of India or the IDBI, and you can also deal with the trading in the stock market also. Next is private sector banks. Private sector banks, the share capital is owned by the private individuals. Example, Lakshmi Vilas Bank, Karur Vysya Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, where the government does not interfere, but they have to follow the norms given under section 22 of the RBI Regulations Act. That is all, children. Now with this, we are coming to the close of the lesson. Almost we have covered what are the topics we covered under this lesson. The different types of bank, how the banks are classified on the basis of functions, on the basis of the status, and on the basis of the ownership pattern. Now the homework for you will be, in this lesson we have only very short answers and short answers. I want you to write, everything is important. Very short answers, all the four, because all the four are important. And in short answer, I want you to write 1 and 2. Okay, in short answers 1 and 2, very short answers all the four. Okay, that is all, children. Have a good day. Bye-bye.